Okay, I managed to fumble my way through through chapter 26. I actually feel, yesterday I was not too bad. Today I feel really horrible. So I'm not very happy because it's Friday and I have to drive tonight. But anyway, I managed to get through chapter 26. Hopefully it's not too horrible because my cold is pretty bad right now. I will be probably slowing down a little bit on how quickly I get the chapters out, because I now am doing a little delivery job Monday through Friday with my car, just because Uber and Lyft are proving to not be enough to survive on. So I'm hoping with this little delivery job it will help, but that will cut out a little bit of time I have in the day for doing this kind of thing. So anyway, without further ado, here is chapter 26. Song of Mornius, chapter 26. Halram smiled as he watched Lieutenant Roth returning across the field, surrounded by a small cluster of elves. He missed these elves, the caretakers of Tyrdan, who had first served him in his temple, who had helped him survive being parted from the stars. Now again they came with their bridle bells jingling, riding with stoic stiffness on their stocky shan. The little beasts they mastered were as colorful as he remembered, with splotches of orange and red across their withers and shaggy chests, stripes of browns and creams down their stumpy legs. Each three-pronged head was hooded black, matching the shaggy tufts, ending each flicking amber tail. The beasts squealed and fretted as their riders nudged them forward with their knuckles. Rounded ears swept sideways and back. The shan advanced with their yellow teeth bared, their heavy manes rippling in the wind. Tarik strode to intercept Roth as he reined in his colt. With a hand flat on the horse's shoulder, Tarik faced the lead elf. Halram watched with human eyes through the flash and flicker of his staff. It was strange how his arm grew fatigued holding Mornius, yet he endured, finding reserves of strength deep in the heart of his human host. It was Galen who whispered to him now. Galen was aware, yet in shock, his thoughts drifting easy like foam across the sea. Despite his confusion, Galen knew how much heat was needed to warm human flesh, and how to squeeze just a fraction of power from Mornius to keep the tents housing the Tyrdan refugees warm. The elves are here, Halram thought to Galen. They bring clothing and furs, even healers. Soon from your labors you may rest, Galen Laval. Galen's will turned him toward the giant. She was surveying the procession of elves from behind a tree. Halram watched as Galen's arm raised all at once, saw the young man's fingers gently touch the giant's hand. "Are you well, Avalar?" Galen asked. "You haven't been yourself." In surprise the giant glanced down to study his face. "Galen," she said after a pause, "then you do still exist." "He exists," Halram reassured her, "yet not so much as I would like. Without him I am helpless. I have no experience with this form. Creatures of flesh make movement look so easy, yet it is complicated, more than you know. While he slumbers," Halram directed his words inward at his host, "and he does so often, I am rendered powerless. It is a grievous thing to render a warder so." Shetra has gone. Bitterly Avalar spoke to the empty air. Like a giant she defended the weak. Somehow she knew that of me, that I would fail my friends. Bid him now to ask how I feel. Halram felt his lips curl down. "I regret I cannot. He is drowsing." "I need Galen," Avalar growled. "Right now I need a friend, which you are not." The frown fixed on his face, Halram watched as the giant stormed off through the snow in the direction of the central fire. He stood abandoned once more, his gaze on the swaying branches disturbed by her passing. The tree was damaged by his might, broken in places beyond repair. It reminded him of all the people who had died, all the lives he'd failed to preserve. "Move," he commanded himself. Inside, Galen was sleeping again and oblivious, with his flesh still wide awake. Left alone, Horam felt the cold creeping into his bones. He shivered where he stood, eyes closed against the wind. He tried to remember how humans did it, how one foot would step forward, followed by the other. The command from his brain raced through his nerves. Foot forward! With all his might, he reached his consciousness toward the limb. Out! Now! Push! 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 Horam started in surprise as Galen's left foot kicked straight out. His torso reared back as the right foot immediately followed. Then he was falling, landing hard on his haunches with his legs widely spread, staring down in dismay at the sparkling snow between them. A mop of red-gray hair rose slowly from the snow, from the wedge of white between his splayed legs. Horam blinked as a forehead climbed into view, and then eyes of piercing midnight twinkling bright. Interesting, said the disembodied head, wriggling its nose to clear snow from its nostrils. Horam tried to glare, which only widened the Thalian night's slowly appearing crooked grin. Deliberately the ghost let his gaze wander languidly down one of Galen's legs, and then the other. I see you've managed to escape the Skystone, Argus drawled. But I must say, this mode of transportation you've chosen has little to be desired. You do know this one hears voices in his head, right? Lord Argus. Horam, pausing, waited for his host to exhale. How did you manage to transport yourself while you were yet living? The disembodied head wriggled its mustache in the snow. You have to ask? Argus tilted his chin to look up slyly. Aren't gods supposed to know everything? A god would not get himself in this position. Horam shifted his hips and then marveled that by his own power he managed to do so. Help me! I cannot move. Flashing him a toothy grin, Argus slowly lowered himself again until just the mop of his hair showed above the snow. Galen, Horam thought to his drowsy host, please wake up. Hands gripped Galen's arms and hauled him upright. Horam swayed for a moment, concentrating hard on knee joints that threatened to buckle at any moment. From the corner of his eye he spotted a face, a deeply carved scowl. Dren Willamar Avram, he said formally. Greetings. I lost sight of you, Dren was saying. Concentrating fiercely, Horam turned Galen's head. He stared at Dren, at his permanent, fierce expression. Who has been lost? With an explosive breath, Dren turned away. Everyone, said the guard bitterly. Captain Vurgen is missing, and Terret fears the worst. Of the few warriors we had to begin with, only 5 remain, myself included. The rest have joined the dance. Horam spoke softly, addressing the pain in the young man's voice. Their ashes fly free now among the stars. I cannot restore life to bodies that have been torn into pieces, Dren Avram. I am no god. I have limitations. The guard seized him behind the neck, gripping him hard. Whatever you are, hissed Dren, I hope you give some thought to what we've done here, how much we've given our lives for you, because should you forget and become like your brother. Galen's neck arched back, an instinctive reaction. Horam frowned as his host's respiration quickened, making talking even more difficult to time between the breaths. Horam stared as the guard shifted around to see his face. Inside, he felt Galen stir to life at last, sensed the human grope for understanding, and then flinch as if stunned. Vurgen? Galen's grief bubbled up from his dreams. No, not Vurgen. Dren nodded slowly. Now that voice I know. He sounds hurt. What are you doing to him? I am doing nothing, Horam said, reclaiming control of Galen's mouth and larynx. Your friend requires rest. I am giving him that. He requires comfort, and I give him that also. My arms are tight around him, Dren Avram. His head cradles against my heart. Dren glowered into his face. You don't have a heart. I don't trust this or you." A grinning Lord Argus floated down, laughing gently and spreading his arms. "Turn around, O supremely glowing one," Argus boomed heartily. "Your faithful are coming." Hiram looked at the ghost with what he hoped was a questioning expression. He continued facing the guard until Dren, with a snort, seized Galen's shoulders and turned him. A procession of brown-skinned elves were walking toward him. He recognized Kildoran, the elfin leader, as the skinny boy who had frequented his temple before his voluntary internment into the staff. After more than 600 cycles, the elf seemed not so young. Gray shot through his long black hair, matching his furry wolf parka. Deep lines chiseled his face, enhancing his stern expression. Behind him came Tarek Florn. "I tried to change his mind," Tarek called out, "but he insisted. He wanted to see for himself." The small company of elves stopped short and stared. "It is true, then?" Kildoran's hands were lifted, his palms turned upward. Halram watched as the leader tested the air with his nerves. Halram sniffed. For the first time he understood smell, could experience it for himself. Now with relish he inhaled Kildoran's spicy elf scent. It reminded him of warmth, the birthing place of stars. He nodded at the elf leader's splayed fingers. "What does your gift tell you?" Kildoran's green eyes widened beneath his thatch of tangled black hair. He mouthed Tiava, the word for father, as his legs brought him limp and trembling into Galen's embrace. Horam held the one-time orphan as best he could, as much as his host's unconsciousness would let him. Kildoran's body shuddered in his grasp, then quickly pulled away. With dignity the elf stepped back to rejoin his people. Placing one hand over the small of his back, Kildoran bowed. The other elves bowed low, their faces vanishing as their furry hoods flopped forward over their heads. Halram strained to do the same, to bow with Galen's body and show his respect, but Galen did not seem to bend at the middle, as much as he leaned toward the elves, and as much he experienced a mild form of surprise as Galen toppled forward, and the snow, like a billion white stars, rushed alarmingly fast to engulf his face, head, and shoulders. He blinked at the icy wet particles of whiteness pressing his face. He kicked slowly with his legs at the snow, but sensed he was going nowhere. Hard hands seized Galen's hips and yanked. Halram found himself upright again, teetering in Tarek's grasp, melting snow dripping from his nostrils. Halram stared at Tarek. What was that? Again Kildoran entered his field of vision. "Great Warder, are you well?" he asked. Gazing into Tarek's bloodshot eyes, Halram nodded. "These others need rest," he managed, though stopping the mouth from moving after the words were done proved difficult. "Will your village shelter them?" "Of course." Kildoran beamed with pride as he described his village and how much it had prospered over the years. Halram only half listened as he tried to read Tarek's face. Tarek was turned away, his attention fixed on the trampled space where so many of his men had died. "You will come?" Kildoran gestured to the south, to his unseen village beyond the restored city. "Please, Great Warder, your flesh requires rest as well, and sustenance. Give us this honor. Let us provide for you once more." "What we need," Tarek broke in, turning, "is a way around that peak. Is there anyone in your village we can hire, someone to guide us?" Kildoran nodded. "Your guide will be the Shikaya River, which flows from the mountain itself. There is a gorge near our village. If you follow it—" Rubbing at his brow, Kildoran frowned. "But no, it is winter. This route would be treacherous for you, so I must advise against it. If you wait until spring and then follow the Shikaya, you will reach the sky-white peaks, and then Mount Chestnut, where Malian is rumored to dwell." Tarek eyed the elf. Halram felt him gathering himself as his anger and exhaustion rose blackly toward the surface. With a soft mental touch, Halram urged Tarek in silence not to speak. We will not wait for spring, he said awkwardly, around a tongue that kept getting in the way. Have you visited Warder's Fall, where we first landed? Has any life returned there after all this time? No, said Halram. Warders touched it, and so it is dead. We are not meant to exist below a sky. You know this, Kildoran. Your people found me near death. They beheld the damage I did to their great tree, how, even at my weakest, I gutted that ancient wood. We have become fond of you, Great Warder, Kildoran said. Tiava, if you fail in this, Talankai will die. You are our last chance for life. He jerked up his head. Yet we cannot fight for you. We wish to, but we cannot, finished Halram. Kildoran nodded grimly, eyes flashing. The magic of old would resist yours. Yes, even against our will. It would be ripped from us and from itself. Talankai would fall to ruin. The Seekers have shown us this, and we believe it. Yet I would like to help as best I may. Your horses are ill-equipped for such terrain. I offer you Shan, the best we have. They will carry you safely where your horses cannot. Halram smiled and nodded while, as a group, the elves turned away. Galen's body was shivering again, attracting unwanted concern from Tarek. He accepted with a nod Tarek's cloak, then struggled to follow as best he could the commander and Dren Avram through the snow. "Wait!" he called after a few shambling steps. When Tarek turned, Halram nodded in the direction of the battle-torn camp. "Avalar. I saw her walking that direction earlier. I believe at present she might need—" He sifted through Galen's memories for the proper words. "Someone to care." Hands trembling, Avalar ran the soft, dry cloth down the blade of her sword, pressing with her thumb along its shallow groove. The central fire burned low before her, with no attentive Captain Viergen to fetch more wood. Already she missed the older human's gentle wit. His steaming Shamara tea he was always quick to hand her in her little wooden cup. "Avalar?" Tarek stopped by her shoulder. His voice caressed her name when he said it, just like his brother's had. "Giant, you must be cold sitting there. Here." Stepping over the log she sat on, Tarek snatched up several broken branches and laid them on the fire. Avalar nodded to show her gratitude and slowly leaned forward over her sword. As she peered into the hungry flames, her tears came again, a silver shimmer across her sight, tinted by the fire's wavering orange. They will not stop. Helplessly she gestured to her tears. She felt rather than saw Tarek sit beside her. "Again I have failed," she told him. "I do not protect as a giant ought. She shook her head. Then she turned toward him, blurting out words she could no longer hide. "I knew your brother, Leader Tarek. Cameron was my friend. Mayhap I could have found a way home, but I sought to stay with you, battle for you like I failed to do for Cameron." She paused, blinking hard to see his face. Grimly he held her gaze. "What else?" Tarek asked softly. "Cameron." Leaning forward, Avalar pressed her face into her hands. "Showed me the truth about you, about humans. I saw it in his heart. I was so filled with hate when I came to Thalas, so much fear. But Cameron," she swallowed, "was kind to me. When Teardown was attacked, saving him was my only thought. I may have saved one of my trainers, or mayhap a child, but all I thought of was saving Cameron. But I failed him." Helplessly she waved her hand in the direction of the city. "All of them." Slowly Tarek turned and lifted his leg to straddle the log, positioning himself to face her. Through her tears she felt his touch. His fingers gently stroke her hand. "I forget how very young you are, Avalar," he chided her softly. "Hear me, Giant. You didn't fail Cameron, or them, or me." Looking down, she stared at her hand, and his fingers seeking to ease her heart. So many men are lost now, she said softly. Your army, so many are dead. Captain Vurgen. She shook her head. I am a giant, Leader Tarek. Giants do the protecting, not prowlers. Oh, I see now, said Tarek gently. Your pride's wounded. You hate it that a prowler came to your rescue. Avalar, it has nothing to do with who protected who. The prowler was being a friend. Avalar, trembling, wiped her tears from her sword's shiny blade with the cloth. If that is sooth, why did she leave me after without a word? I never thanked her. She started at Tarek's laughter. Looking down into his face, she saw his grin. She's a prowler, Tarek said. Think on that. It might have nothing to do with friendship. They're magical, so they sense your importance. That's it. He transferred his other leg over the log and stood, bringing his concern up closer to her level. You're not a failure, but you are flesh and blood like everyone else. Besides, with his hand he clapped her knee. Who you are should not be determined by what you are. Rest, however, he added, often makes a big difference. Up now, Avalar. Let's get you to bed. He nodded through the softly falling snow to where the Eris elves worked quickly to tend the humans in the various tents. Come on. Still grinning, he stuck out his hand until slowly she clasped his fingers.